You've probably heard about Bolivia's most famous ancient sites, like Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, with their mind-boggling stonework and mysterious origins. But today we're diving into a hidden gem in the jungles of southern Bolivia that might just outshine them both, El Fuerte de Samaipata. This megalithic mountain, carved with incredible precision, is one of the largest rock carvings on Earth, and its secrets might rewrite what we know about ancient history. In 2023, I made the trek to Samaipata, and let me tell you, it's not easy to get to. It involved a flight to La Paz, another to Santa Cruz, and then a bumpy 3-hour drive through the Bolivian jungle to a remote town nestled at 6,000 feet in elevation. But when we finally arrived, all the travel was worth it. Samaipata is a colossal red sandstone outcrop stretching 220 meters long. Imagine 2 football fields end to end. The site itself covers over 50 acres. And this isn't just any rock. It's one of the largest carved rocks in the world and a UNESCO World Heritage Site that's been hiding in the jungle for millennia. The site features intricate carvings of animals, geometric shapes, channels, and niches. These carvings, found all over the site, appear to be extremely weathered. You have to wonder, just how old is this site really? Now, here's where things get intriguing. Unlike the sites in Peru that have been attributed to the Inca, for this site, archaeologists believe the builders were an older, lesser-known Amazonian group called the Chané, dating to around 300 CE. Their evidence? Ceramics found around the site with styles linked to this peaceful agricultural tribe. But does it make sense that a culture known for farming corn and peanuts created this monumental carving with such intricate designs? Let's dig into how archaeologists date sites like these and why I think there might be a different story. Here's the problem with dating megalithic sites like Samaipata. You can't date stone. So archaeologists rely on clues like organic materials, think charcoal or bones, that are found nearby using radiocarbon dating. But of course, it's possible that those materials came from later visitors, not the original builders of the site. They also use stratigraphy for relative dating. The deeper layers are typically older, and the artifacts found at the same layers are assumed to be about the same age. But at exposed sites like Samaipata, erosion muddies the timeline. Archaeologists also look at documentary evidence, including written records and inscriptions, like those on Egyptian statues or India's Barabar caves. After visiting many of these sites, you'll start to notice that some of the inscriptions are substantially lower quality than the underlying monuments or artifacts. For those watching this episode, you'll see some examples of this. The inscriptions look and feel a little more like graffiti than reliable scientific evidence of the actual age of the site. Don't get me wrong, I do have an appreciation for the very difficult work that archaeologists do all around the world. And in their defense, there is no irrefutable scientific evidence that these sites are older than what we're being told. But there is quite a lot of circumstantial evidence to suggest that at least some of these sites are substantially older, which I believe is the case with Samaipata. As I mentioned before, the Chane were noted for their peaceful agricultural lifestyle. There is also no other known site attributed to this group of people that featured a carved rock of this magnitude with its zoomorphic and geometric shapes. The rock at El Fuerte is considered an outlier, what archaeologists call a unique ceremonial center for the Chané. Is it possible that this culture created a one-time masterpiece that ended up becoming one of the world's largest rock-carved sites in the world? Yes. Is it more likely that this site was created by an older culture and that the Chané simply later lived around this site? I believe so. To quickly cover the rest of Samaipata's documented history, there are 2 other cultures that have been attributed to this site. The Inca incorporated Samaipata into their empire as a provincial capital around the late 15th century. Beautiful Inca walls can be seen all over the site and even over the top of it, And there are Inca buildings and very large ceremonial plazas and terracing of neighboring hillsides that you can visit all over the site. Then finally, the Spanish used it briefly as a fortress in the 1570s, before abandoning it in 1618 to establish the modern town of Samaipata in the valley below. This is why today the site is called El Fuerte, or the fort. So let's talk about this incredible site. As I mentioned before, the mountain is made of red sandstone, which is relatively soft. The hardness of red sandstone generally falls between a 3 and a 7 on the Mohs scale of hardness. And if you don't know what the Mohs scale of hardness is or why it matters, don't worry. I plan to cover that in a future episode. The upside of softer stone is that it's easier to carve. The downside is that it's more susceptible to erosion. Before it was designated a World Heritage Site, tourists were allowed to walk on the rock itself. But that has since been closed down, and the walkways have been built above and around the site to assist in preservation. For anyone interested in visiting, which I highly recommend, I'd suggest bringing binoculars so you can see the details a little bit more clearly than you can with just the naked eye. The site has an east-west orientation. Starting on the western side of the site, you can see 2 large feline figures carved in high relief on circular bases, almost like a giant coin. These are the only examples of high relief carving on the entire site. The first carving is believed to be a jaguar and is very large and sort of crouched over. The other, believed to be a puma, is much smaller and a little harder to see. As you move up the mountain toward the east, you see the most iconic feature: 2 parallel grooves slicing through the rock, flanked by zigzag channels. Locals call this the spine of the serpent, and it's easy to see why. It also looks a little bit like a cosmic runway. This is probably the most famous aspect of this site, and as you can imagine, this carving has given rise to some of the more creative theories about the origin of the site. Back in the 1960s, Erich von Däniken, a Swiss theorist and author of the famous book Chariots of the Gods, visited Samaipata twice. His conclusion? That this rock was once used as a UFO landing site. Crazy? Maybe. As you work your way past the spine of the serpent and further up the mountain to the highest point, you will see a 20-foot wide circle with 12 evenly spaced, tooth-like triangular and rectangular niches cut into its walls. This carving has been dubbed the Choir of Priests, as it was believed that the niches served as seats or alcoves for priests. This particular carving is fascinating to me. It appears very geometric and almost mechanical, like a giant gear or cogwheel. Was it a ceremonial altar, an astronomical observatory, or something we can't even imagine directly related to the parallel grooves located just below it? Finally, there are a number of niches carved around the base of the site, which are similar to niches you see carved in many other sites around the world. In particular, there are a few that appear to be multi-layered, a smaller niche inside of a larger one, reminiscent of what you see in some of the other ancient megalithic sites in Peru, like Machu Picchu. Speaking of other sites in Peru, when I visited Samaipata, I was struck by the similarities in style to some other sites in the Cusco region of Peru. I'm reminded of the Sayhuite monolith, for example. It's a standalone monolith with more than 200 geometric and zoomorphic carvings on it, as well as stairwells and niches similar to Samaipata. It even has several high-relief feline carvings. Another site with striking similarities is the Kenco archaeological complex, also near Cusco. This site is a massive limestone outcrop with countless cutouts, stairs, seats, and other features. Interestingly, in the center of this site, there's a stone cutout made of 2 circles that create a puma head profile during winter solstice. Both of these sites that I just discussed in Peru are attributed to the Inca period, which is 1400 to 1500 CE. And while these sites have striking similarities to Samaipata, they have totally different dating. In Bolivia, the site is being attributed to a culture that lived in 300 CE. In Peru, it's dated to around 14 or 1500 CE. But is it possible that this style of structure in both countries is much, much older? And is it the same culture? These are the types of questions I think are worth exploring more deeply. Back at the site in Bolivia, just down the hill from the main rock at Samaipata, there's another feature that surprised me, a Chincana, a 4.5-foot wide tunnel plunging into the earth. The Bolivian archaeologists once explored the first 300 feet of it before they were abruptly stopped by a cave-in. When I visited, the entrance was blocked, and sadly, the tunnel was filled with water and trash. The official sign at the Chincana lists possible uses as an escape route, a water channel, or even a penalty area. But let's be real, this tunnel feels like something much more. In Cusco again, it was just announced that a mile-long Chincana was discovered under the city of Cusco. This discovery was long rumored by Andean myths and later by Spanish chroniclers. Chincana means labyrinth, or the place where one gets lost, in the native Inca language. In fact, in Indian myth, Chincanas are thought to be pathways used by mythic figures to travel underground. One myth even states that these underground tunnels connect Cusco with Lake Titicaca, both sacred sites to the Inca that are 125 miles apart. In other words, the tunnel under Cusco, and more broadly the tunnels across Peru, were always thought to exist, but thankfully researchers recently used ground-penetrating radar to finally confirm this ancient tunnel system. So what's up with Samaipata's Chincana? Does it connect to a hidden network, and was it a sacred passage, like those discussed in the ancient Indian myths? The mysteries don't stop at the site. One of my favorite things to do is to check out local archaeological museums if they're available, and there's a really good one down the road in the town of Samaipata. There, I found something jaw-dropping. 6 elongated skulls on display. There were no labels or discussion of their origins, just a sign above them explaining the process of artificial cranial deformation, where skulls of babies are bound to create a cone-like shape. But here's the thing. As many of you know, there are some elongated skulls worldwide, like those in Paracas, Peru, that have unique sutures and larger volumes that can't be explained by artificial head binding. These types of skulls are clearly something else. And are the ones in the museum the same? I wish I knew more, but the museum is silent on this topic. And finally, the museum contains some very good examples of what archaeologists call star-shaped mace heads. These artifacts are precisely cut, 6-pointed stars, made of stone, about the size of a large grapefruit, with a perfectly drilled central channel. The official story is that they were weapons used as clubs in warfare. The artifacts in this museum are officially being dated to 14 to 1500 CE, but there are very similar artifacts found in northern Peru that have been dated back to 900 BC from the famous site of Kunturwasi. Again, same types of artifacts, very different dating. To close, I believe Samaipata's carvings, tunnels, and artifacts raise more questions than answers. Is this really a 1700-year-old, one-time Chane creation? Or could it be a relic of an older civilization that built similar structures in Peru? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Bolivia's hidden gem, hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and leave a 5-star review on your favorite platform. Your support helps me grow this channel. You can also follow me on Instagram, X, and Facebook at Secrets in Stone. We'll see you next time.